evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Twitter, as well as the Carving It Up YouTube channel and the Grid Network YouTube channel. As always, I am Bryson Carver. We have got an absolutely loaded show on tap for you guys tonight. A lot of NFL, a lot of football, may even touch on Michigan before the day's over, who knows, but lots to discuss. Going to get into CJ Stroud, why he is currently, as we sit here today, the MVP. You heard that right, most valuable, and I put a lot of emphasis on that V, as you guys know, most valuable player of the NFL through the first 10 weeks. I'll get into that in just a second. Also, the 49ers steamrolling the Jacksonville Jaguars, why I'm still not concerned about Jacksonville and Trevor Lawrence, and why the 49ers are very, very, very much back, and for good reason, although there is one little tiny kink in the armor, one little issue with their style of football, but overwhelmingly, it's obviously great. Getting to that in about 15 to 20 minutes or so. Also, gonna get into Dak Prescott, Rain Dakota Prescott. I'll say that with more emphasis, as y'all are accustomed to me saying once we get to that in about a half hour, and why he is playing the best football of his career, and why Mike McCarthy, the head coach of the Cowboys, deserves a lot of credit for that. I'll discuss that. Also, why I am concerned about the team that I've had for the last 2 weeks is the best team in football, the Baltimore Ravens. They have a major flaw that they've had for a few years now. That's a big problem, and it revolves around the quarterback. It revolves around the head coach. It revolves around the entire team and organization. I'll get into that. Also, recap of other games around the NFL in Week 10. We had some fantastic finish, especially in that second window. A bunch of walk-off field goals. It was awesome. Even the game last night was a defensive struggle, but still nonetheless somewhat entertaining. I'll get to that on the show, and at the end of today's show. Broncos Bills tonight, Monday Night Football. Give me a fun one from Buffalo. I predict that at the end of the show. But first, CJ Stroud's the MVP of the league. Through 10 weeks, that's your guy. And you guys know, maybe you don't, those that are first-timers and Carving Up Live, welcome. We appreciate that. Hit subscribe. We appreciate it, no question about it. But anytime I discuss MVP, and especially as it revolves around the NBA, because the NBA MVP historically has been a far more, we use it to judge players far more than we do. We use it to judge players in the NBA far more than we do in the NFL. I mean, Rich Gannon, no disrespect to Rich Gannon has an MVP. Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback ever, has only 3 MVPs. Okay, if we're being honest, Tom deserves probably like 10 minimum. Okay, Peyton Manning probably deserves 8, and he's got 5, which is the record. But I put a lot of emphasis on valuable. What is valuable? Well, that's obviously subjective. It depends on what you consider to be valuable. What's valuable in your house? What's valuable? What's more valuable? Is it your car, or is it, whatever the case may be? It's all subjective. But I put a lot of emphasis on, we know it's the quarterback award, and frankly, it should be a quarterback award because that position is 15, 20 times more valuable than the next most important position, whether it's left tackle, whether it's edge rusher, these days wide receiver. The value of the quarterback position is so far ahead of everything else, it's almost silly. Some of that's rule changes, etc. CJ Stroud is a kid. We know his story to a certain degree, right? Came out of Ohio State, second overall pick in the draft by the Houston Texans. And funny thing is, there was a point in time I remember talking about on this show, are the Texans going to take him second overall? That was a genuine discussion. Obviously, the Texans completely sniffed that out. They said, no, we're taking CJ Stroud. This is our guy. This is our franchise quarterback. And thus far, they've proven to be overwhelmingly correct in that assessment and in that decision. But when you recognize what CJ Stroud inherited, just from a team success perspective, the Houston Texans in 2020 with a healthy Deshaun Watson. This is when Deshaun is at the peak of his powers, and the Houston Texans are, coming off of a playoff appearance, and it looks like the things are trending upwards, and they go 4-12 in 2020, which was the COVID season. So maybe you put a little bit of an asterisk next to that. But in 2021, losing record, top 10 in draft, and 2022, they finish with the worst record in the division, good enough to get the second overall pick of the draft. And if not for a Hail Mary against the Indianapolis Colts in Week 18, they would have gotten the first pick of the draft, and they're 5-4 today. And it's because of CJ Stroud. When you look at what he's done this season, well, actually, we could put up the graphic here. Let's put up the graphic to show what CJ Stroud has done. He's second in the NFL in passing yards. He's tied for 8th in touchdown passes. He's 7th in passer rating, 10th in QBR, and number 1, first in touchdown to interception ratio. He's not turned the football over, a 15-2 touchdown to interception ratio, which is ridiculous when you again consider these a rookie. And it's not like we've seen rookie quarterbacks in the past. Ben Roethlisberger in 2004. Dak Prescott to a certain degree in 2016. We've seen this with quarterbacks in the past where they go to somewhat ideal situations where, whether it's a good offensive line, good coach, good defense, good weapons, whatever the case may be. It's not a situation where it's Andrew Luck to the awful Colts or Trevor Lawrence. I know he didn't play well yesterday, but Trevor Lawrence to the awful Jaguars. It's not a situation like, where like Dak or like Roethlisberger, where they go to ideal situations. CJ Stroud, they're not babysitting him. They're not saying, okay, we're gonna coach you to not lose the game, to not make mistakes, the Jimmy Garoppolo treatment, so to speak. No. CJ Stroud on throws of 10 or more yards in his last 2 games. He's first in completions, first in passing yards, first in touchdown passes. He has not thrown an interception. Even better, 10 yards. I mean, a lot of guys can throw 10 yards. How about 20 yards? Which, according to the NFL and according to Pro Football Focus, all these statistical websites, constitutes as a deep pass, a throw that goes 20 or more yards down the field. That is called a deep pass, 20 or more yards. Okay, here's CJ Stroud's numbers in that regard, and they are silly. 147.5 passer rating. That leads the NFL by a lot. 6 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. That's the highest ratios you might imagine in the league. 665 yards. That also leads the league. 64.5 completion percentage. Again, these are throws of 20 or more yards. He's completing in the mid-60s% of his passes. And you consider, listen, I'm not going to throw shade on Tank Dell, Noah Brown, Nico Collins, some of the guys the Houston Texans have, Dalton Schultz. I'm not going to throw shade on those guys, but nobody's mistaking Dalton Schultz with Travis Kelce. Nobody's mistaking Tank Dell for Tyreek Hill. Nobody is mistaking Nico Collins or Noah Brown for A.J. Brown and CeeDee Lamb. For the record, Houston was missing 6 starters yesterday against Cincinnati when they won the game, obviously, 30-27 on another game-winning drive by Stroud. You also consider the fact that earlier this season, when the Texans seem to be reeling, and it's like, okay, the Texans, they'll be competitive, they'll be fine, but we're not really going to take them seriously as an actual playoff threat. He was missing 4 of his 5 offensive linemen and was still winning games against Jacksonville, who up until yesterday had the longest winning streak in the league, and Pittsburgh. This is not just me as a Steelers fan, but I think we can all agree Pittsburgh has a pretty good defense. That's putting it mildly. He hung 30 on them. You look at what Houston's doing. You look at what Stroud's doing against Joe Burrow, who is, I think most of us agree, is the second best quarterback in the league to Mahomes. And Burrow had a rough going through 2 interceptions. And frankly, Stroud threw a bad pick that kind of helped Cincinnati get in the game. But if that's like his first big, awful rookie mistake, it took him to mid-season, took him to Veterans Day essentially to do that. Congratulations. Like that's outstanding by a rookie quarterback. The shots down the field. Again, making Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Noah Brown, Dalton Schultz household names. Now, to the credit of the Houston Texans, to the credit of obviously their head coach, who I think is up there, if not the front runner for Coach of the Year in DeMeco Ryans, the Texans ran for 188 yards. That's going to help your rookie quarterback in any way, shape, or form. But still, Stroud, a touchdown through the air, touchdown on the ground, 356. He did throw that interception I mentioned, but had a passer rating of 87, which isn't great, but again, led the game-winning drive, QBR of 71. Again, we've got a long way to go. We still have another 8 weeks left in the regular season. We still have another 2 months to go, essentially. We still got to go Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's and basically a week and a half after that before we even get to the playoffs. But when you look at what the Houston Texans are doing, again, they're a game back of the Jacksonville Jaguars for the NFC South lead, or sorry, AFC South lead, rather. And you look at their schedule, it's not exactly filled with world beaters. They have the Cardinals. Now, the Cardinals won yesterday. They're still 2-8. They're not a very good football team. They have the Cardinals next week at home. Then they got a big game. In my opinion, the NFL should flex this game to potentially Sunday Night Football. Jaguars, Texans in Houston. For the record, Houston went there in week 3 and bludgeoned Jacksonville. Stroud, everybody included. Denver, which Denver seems to be getting their act together, but they're still 3-5. Again, we will see them tonight. Then they play Zach Wilson and the Jets. I'm sorry, Jets fans, Aaron Rodgers will not play this game. And if he does, he'll be about 50-60%. At Tennessee, who is not a very good football team, well coached, not that good of a roster. Browns will be a tough one given that defense. Then they got the Titans again, and then they finish with the Colts. They're sitting here at 5-4. You're telling me they can't make the playoffs? I get the listen. The AFC playoff picture is I don't even want to call it a mess. I mean, it's pretty chaotic right now. But as we sit here today, season ends. Texans are in the playoffs. The Houston Texans, who have been the laughingstock, or at least one of them, of the National Football League for the last 3 years, would be in the playoffs today. And for the record, they take on Baltimore. Baltimore's dealing with their own problems. Baltimore actually did beat Houston way back when in week 1, but that's way before Stroud, found his comfort before this Texans team kind of found its identity. This kid is special. And listen, I liked him more than Bryce Young. And for the record, and I will die on this hill, I still think Bryce has potential. I do. I see him make throws where I'm like, okay, there it is right there. That's the guy I saw at Alabama who put the fear of God in me as a Tennessee fan back in October, and put the fear of God in a lot of teams, Auburn, Georgia, etc. Like, we've seen Bryce Young do this. The supporting cast in Carolina is awful. I get that. But I did like him over Bryce Young. Size, mobility, Stroud, Young, it's pretty close. Although I'd probably take Stroud in that regard. Much bigger arm talent, much better arm talent, more accurate. I feel like his body could hold up better in the NFL than Bryce Young. What this kid is doing is it's almost unprecedented. And again, we need full transparency. We kind of need some of these younger quarterbacks to hit, given the greats that have retired in the last half decade or so. Brady, Breeze, guys like that. Like, we kind of need some of these younger guys to hit, so we have this next generation. Not that we don't have great quarterbacks already, but it'd be nice if some of these others hit. CJ Stroud's hit. He's already, we can go ahead and put to bed the whole offensive rookie of the year. That's unanimous. That's like Steph Curry in 2016. It's unanimous. Like, don't even discuss it. MVP, there's guys I consider, one of which I'll talk about in a couple of segments, in the guy in Dallas. There's a guy in Detroit too, I think is in the discussion. The guy in Kansas City, Mahomes, heard of him? I've heard good things about him. Here, he's a pretty good quarterback. I'm not going to totally write him off yet. The guy in Philadelphia, Hurts, not going to write him off yet either. But right now, numbers and true value. Again, this isn't to diminish what Mahomes has around him, or what Hurts, Dak, Goff have around them. Heck, I still think Lamar's not out of the race yet, even despite yesterday's poor performance. What this guy's doing is unbelievable for a rookie. This would be impressive if he were a 5-year vet, a rookie, dealing with injuries to the offense virtually all season long, going on the road to Cincinnati, probably the hottest team in football, feeling good about itself. Joe Burrow's playing well, and the defense well coached, and the pass rusher they got there. And you go on the road and beat them? Special, man. Absolutely special. CJ Stroud today, yeah, he's the MVP frontrunner, and I think it's pretty clear. Not going to say it's just this huge gap between Stroud and everybody else, but man, this kid is absolutely putting on a show for the rest of the NFL world to see. And by the way, just a cherry on top, not that this should matter towards the MVP discussion, really good kid. I mean, you see the interviews with him after games, post-game press conferences. You see how his teammates just gravitate to him. He's really easy to root for, and Houston, Nick Caserio, props to him, the general manager. That Texans front office, everybody should be over the moon about CJ Stroud, about their future as a franchise. We've always kind of laughed at the Texans, like they always find a way to screw it up. If they screw it up with this kid, then they need to be disbanded as a franchise. They need to just get the franchise out of Houston, or just, I don't know. This kid's fantastic, and he's so fun to watch. Special talent. There's no doubt about it. By the way, everybody feel free to chime in the comment section. Do you think Stroud's the MVP? If not, who else? Looks like we've got a comment as I say that. Parnell's going to be on me about this for a while. He says, is CJ Stroud better than Trevor Lawrence now? Well, listen, I can't fight that he's obviously playing better than Lawrence. I'm about to talk about Lawrence, the Jags, about to talk about the Niners as well in just a second. Here's what I will say, Parnell. Here's what I will say. Because listen, the Texans haven't made the playoffs yet. The only thing, and I promise I'll answer your question, Parnell. Just I did want to say this because I was thinking about this as I was doing my research for the show and kind of watching some of the talking heads, watching some of the shows today. Many of these folks, which I have immense respect for. I don't like we talk about overreaction Monday. I don't like how every week, and this isn't even reference to Trevor Lawrence, but it feels as if on a week-to-week basis, every game is a referendum on certain quarterbacks. And I think that's weird. I think that's a poor way to judge how good a guy is just based on one performance week to week. Now, MVP, which I just talked about with Stroud, yeah, that's totally fair. What I say? What have you done for me lately? Janet Jackson. But in terms of your overall body of work, today I would still take by a hair just because of his body of work. That matters. I mean, by the way, I take Lawrence over Stroud today. But last year, I'll put Parnell's comment back up there for context. Last year, Tom Brady was fine. He didn't have the greatest supporting cast in terms of his O-line, but he was fine. I still would have had Tom as a top 10 guy because the resume that matters. I mean, it does. But listen, is there any question who's playing better today between Stroud and Lawrence? No, it's not even, you won't get that argument out of me. If even the most crazed Jacksonville fan, even they can't argue that. But by the way, this is what I love about this. This just sets up a fantastic, and it's a 1:00 kickoff, 1:00 Eastern kickoff, and noon Central time, because that's where it's going to be in Houston. Jaguars, Texans, NFL. I think the Sunday night game. Okay, the Sunday night game is Ravens, Chargers. That's not a bad game. The Chargers, even when they lose, they're interesting, and the Ravens are obviously one of the premier teams in football. That's not a bad game by any stretch, but NFL may have to seriously consider flexing Jags, Texans into Sunday night football, because that's too not to throw shade on the 1:00 kickoffs here in the East Coast, but that's a really good game. Like, I think the country deserves to see that, and not just have to get Sunday ticket or hope that they get the game regionally. My man Philip Chenault's in the comments. What's up, Philip? He says, I think it's going to come down to Dak and Stroud to win the MVP at the end of the season, since it is a QB award. Stroud has been a top 5 QB this year, which is crazy. He has been a top 5 QB. There's no question about it. Again, that doesn't mean I think he is yet a top 5 QB. Is he top 10? I don't think there's any question about it. You're telling me there's 10 guys? I was talking about this last week when he led that game-winning drive through 5 touchdowns against Tampa Bay, which we saw what Tampa Bay yesterday did to Will Levis, another rookie. Okay, Will Levis is a rookie too, and you saw what the Bucs did to him. Stroud made them look like a peewee football defense. It's unbelievable. This kid is fantastic. But yeah, I do think Dak will be in the discussion the rest of the year. I'll talk about Dak in about 15, 20 minutes or so. And again, I mentioned Goff. I think Goff is very much in the discussion. I'm not gonna say Lamar's out of it quite yet. Mahomes, not gonna rule him out yet. Neither am I in with Hurts. I don't think there's a definitive. I guess there's probably a definitive number 2 than I think about it, but I don't think it's a runaway yet with Stroud. But today, again, numbers matter. Most valuable. I mean, I've heard today, and then I'll move on to San Francisco, Jacksonville. I heard today that if the Texans don't win the division, then Stroud can't be MVP. Why not? Well, why can't he be? We expected the Jaguars to win the division. I remember checking everybody. The only other somewhat controversial pick that I saw to win the AFC South was Tennessee, and that's just based on track record. That's Mike Vrabel, Derrick Henry, and their history of just somehow finding a way to sneak into the playoffs. That's all that was based on. We all assume Jacksonville was going to win the division, and I still think they probably are going to win the AFC South. They have a chance to beat Houston in Houston, although given what Stroud's doing, we'll see. But given the expectations, given what he inherited, given where this organization was at, I mean, they're just going through coach after. I mean, this is their 4th straight season. Think about this, folks. 4th straight season for Houston with a new head coach. Bill O'Brien was the guy to start 2020 before he was fired midseason. Then they had David Culley, which they did that man dirty. That's another discussion for another day. They had David Culley in 2021. They had Lovie Smith last year. And now this year, D'Amico Ryans, who, again, I think is up there, if not the front runner for Coach of the Year. Kevin O'Connell's got a discussion. Heck, I think Mike McCarthy has a discussion. I'll get to that a little later. Man, hats off to Houston. This is absolutely spectacular what they're doing and what their quarterback is doing. He is today the MVP front runner. Shifting now, another AFC South game. 49ers Jags. I was, to put it mildly, dead wrong on this game. I said Jacksonville, and I said Jacksonville by 10. That was just a teensy little bit off. Niners beat the Jags 34-3. They crushed them, start to finish. Wasn't even a contest. Get to Jacksonville in a few minutes, but I did want to talk about San Francisco because I saw a lot of folks kind of writing San Francisco off, and I said, time out, listen, and I'm not going to act like there wasn't concern on my end. There was a concern on carving it up about the San Francisco 49ers and their state, but I said, even though I picked the Jaguars to win this game, I said, listen, San Francisco, this is Kyle Shanahan coming off of a bye. This is one of the smartest coaches in all of football, especially in the offensive side of the ball. Brock Purdy, I mean, the man got concussed against Minnesota, suffered some extra blows to the head against Cincinnati the very next week. I'm not sure exactly where he was at from a health standpoint. We can only speculate, but he gets the bye. McCaffrey's back healthier than he was. Deebo's back, and Trent Williams. I heard Trent Williams compared to Shaq today. In terms of his dominance as left tackle, the numbers don't lie. I don't totally disagree with that comparison, cross-sport comparison. But you get best left tackle in football back. You get one of the best offensive skill position players in the NFL back in Deebo. George Kittle has an extra week off to get healthy. Same with Christian McCaffrey. Brock Purdy gets recalibrated, and in terms of mechanics and everything else, decision-making, Kyle Shanahan, this 49ers defense, which just so happened to add, if he reaches his potential, one of the better pass rushers in the league, and Chase Young, who did get a sack yesterday on Trevor Lawrence. I mean, this is the 49ers flexing their muscles. This is what the 49ers looked like through the first 5 weeks of the season before they went through this 3-game losing streak. And this is why everybody was off the Purdy bandwagon. I was one of the first people on it, and I was more than welcome to invite others to join because I said when that game against Tampa Bay last year, I said, I get Tampa Bay. They're not great. I understand that. This is a rookie quarterback. He played in relief of Garoppolo the week prior to against Miami. Todd Bowles a smart defensive head coach. He saw film on Purdy. So the Buccaneers. See what he did? I mean, he's just flinging it all over the field. And that to me showed the difference when people are saying, oh, well, we saw Jimmy Garoppolo do this. No, we didn't. Kyle Shanahan, check the tape, check the numbers, check everything. Coached when Jimmy Garoppolo was his quarterback, coached not to lose. It's Jimmy, don't make a mistake, don't screw it up. Purdy, let it fly, kid. By the way, here's Brock Purdy's numbers in case for those of you that don't think he's good. By the way, making big time throws. How about I mentioned the Stroud stats about him throwing 20 or more yards down the field. Brock Purdy on 15 or more 15-yard plus throws in week 10, so yesterday. He got this is according to Pro Football Focus, by the way. He got a 98.6 passing grade first. He went 7 for 7, a $184, 3 touchdowns, and had a perfect passer rating. For the record, he still leads the NFL in passer rating. Not even Stroud, not even Hurts or Dak or Mahomes. Nope, still Purdy. Still sturdy Purdy. He's still in yards, first in yards per pass, and 7th in completion percentage at about 68, if you round up 69%. You say, well, Bryson, didn't you just say 2 weeks ago when they played the Cincinnati Bengals that, Brock Purdy needs all the working pieces around to win? Well, yes, I did say that. But here's the key factor that you might be forgetting about what I said 2 weeks ago. Brock Purdy is a guy who does need the pieces around him to be successful. But if he does, the Niners can win the Super Bowl. And that, my friends, you saw some of the quarterback play yesterday. That's more than you can say about a lot of guys. That's why I say, and I may have jumped the gun a little bit after that game against Dallas and putting him at the edge of right at number 10, 10th best quarterback in the league. Might have jumped the gun a little bit. But can you name me 12 quarterbacks better than Brock Purdy? That's kind of where I got him. That 12, like that Kirk Cousins area, that's where I've got Derek Carr area. I mean, I'm higher in Carr the most, but that's where I've got Brock Purdy. The numbers don't lie. The film doesn't lie. And the trust that Kyle Shanahan puts in him doesn't lie. Now, the only downside, and it's a little one, because listen, I don't want us to act like Jacksonville is just a bunch of bums. This team had the longest winning streak in football until yesterday. They were doing something right. Okay, Trevor in this winning streak had a passer rating over 100. And I'll get to Trevor in just a second. And the Jaguars defense was number 1 in the NFL in takeaways. Like they were doing, and Doug Peterson, we know how good of a coach he is. Travis Etienne running the football very effectively. He's been one of the better running backs quietly, been one of the better running backs in the league this season. Like Jacksonville was doing something right. And San Francisco came in and bludgeoned them. By the way, Jaguars coming off a bye too, which makes the win for San Francisco all the more impressive. The only issue, though, with San Francisco, and we did see this in that 3-game losing streak. What's the stat with Kyle Shanahan? I think it's something like 0-30, 0-29, or 1-29. Like in 30 games, or he's like 1-29 when trailing by 5 or more going into the fourth quarter. It's something along those lines. Like when San Francisco is kind of in a dogfight and they're trailing, they struggle to close. They struggle to come back because in some ways, maybe their roster isn't built to come back. It's built to, it's kind of like Mike Tyson. Right, like Mike Tyson, when Mike Tyson gets up on you, man, he is, forget it, you're done. It's over. Again, I mentioned Shaquille O'Neal, or like Shaquille O'Neal was, if Shaquille O'Neal's got you on the ropes, you're up 10 going the fourth quarter. To use a Shaq phrase that he uses often on inside the NBA, get the ball to the big man, let him dominate. Get the ball to the big man. Just get the ball to the big man. He's going to get it done. But if we're tied in the fourth quarter and you hack a Shaq, then it's a different problem because then Shaq can't beat you at the free throw line. San Francisco does struggle to come back. That said, when they're on their, forget A+ game, they're on their A- game, which they were on their A+ game yesterday. Basically, everybody that wore gold helmet played well. But if they're on their A- game, they can beat pretty much everybody pretty comfortably. I maintained, even in the 3-game losing streak, I still maintained on this show, that's the best roster in football. I mean, I please tell me the weakness. Again, and I've said this, even since the Week 5 game against Dallas before that, I said if Brock Purdy is the weak link of the Niners, that's the best team in football. Now, I'm not saying they're necessarily going to be number 1 on Bryson's best 10. You'll have to tune in for that on Wednesday. Though, obviously, they were number 8 the last couple of weeks. Last week, just because they didn't play. They were on a bye. But you just have to tune in Wednesday around 7 o'clock to 7 Eastern to see where I have the Niners. But, yeah, this team is pretty much back. They're pretty much back. Heck of a win for the Niners. Very, very, very impressed. As for Jacksonville, so this is about the worst case scenario minus injuries to your best players that you could have possibly imagined for if you're a Jags fan. So look, here's my thing for Jacksonville. Every team in the NFL has a burn the tape game. Every team has it. Dallas has maybe 2 with Arizona and San Francisco. Arizona's a far more, San Francisco, we saw what they did yesterday too, a very good Jags team. Arizona, that's a different story. But I get Dobbs at quarterback, getting to Joshua Dobbs later in the show. I get Dobbs at quarterback. You can't lose that game as a double-digit favorite. The Detroit Lions have a burn the tape game. See how the Lions looked yesterday? Yeah, they scored 6 against Baltimore. Burn the tape. Forget it ever happened. Let's just move on. Every team has a bad day at the Kansas City has a burn the tape game. They scored 9 points against the Broncos, who gave up a 70-pointer to Miami. By the way, Miami also is a burn the tape game. Got beat by 4 touchdowns to inconsistent Buffalo. Every team in the NFL is a burn the tape game. This is Jacksonville's. Now, is it concerning from the perspective of Trevor isn't the quarterback? At least he hasn't been to the first. They're 6-3. So 9 games of the season that he was the last 9 games of last year. Sure, that's concerning if you're a Jags fan, an optimistic Jags fan, or a Trevor Lawrence fan, which I am, would say, yeah, but it was literally at this point of the season when he turned it around last year. Week 10, week 11, somewhere around that time, Jags got in a roll. They were 3-7. They were as bad as 3-7 last year, got hot. Went 6-1 their last 7 games, won a playoff game when trailing 27-0 to the Los Angeles Chargers. So I don't think Jacksonville is just in the dumps right now. So you look at the AFC picture, as crazy as the AFC playoff picture is, and it is a mess, even with as hot as Houston has been, despite losing to Houston. Jacksonville's leading the AFC South, and they'd be the 3 seed today playing Cleveland. Now, that'd be a dicey game given how good Cleveland's defense is, but I'd probably take Jacksonville because they're at home and they have the better quarterback and the better coach, while I like Stefanski. Every team has a burn the tape game. Now, am I probably going to have to sell my Trevor Lawrence MVP stock this year? Yeah, probably. I'm going to have to come out and say it's probably, that ship's probably sailed. Trevor was my preseason pick before the season to win MVP. That's probably gone now. I don't think that's like a death sentence to the Jaguars. Can he still play at an elite level? I still think he can. We saw him do it at the end of last season. I think he's still like Doug Peterson. I don't think he's all of a sudden a terrible head coach. I mean, I don't. I still think Travis Etienne's an elite player. There we go. Okay, sorry. Froze there. I apologize for that. We were freezing there and carving it up. I apologize. The connection went out there for just a moment. So we're good. We're good on carving up live. So there we go. But yeah, it's a burn in the tank game for Jacksonville. No reason to panic. That's kind of where I'm at on them. Got a comment here from my buddy Philip. He says, would you say Purdy is a top 10 QB in the league right now? Well, he's definitely played like a top 10 QB. Again, I still wouldn't quite put him in that group. I did a segment about 2-3 weeks ago. I think it was 3 weeks ago. When I said, yeah, it was 3 weeks ago, because when the Ravens beat the Lions, bludgeoned the Lions 38-6, I said that there are 8 guys I would consider blank check quarterbacks. I don't have the graphic on the show today, but guys that I would not even think twice. Whatever the market for a quarterback is, that's what I'm paying them. Like I'm going to give them their money. And I said it was like Mahomes. I still would pay Lawrence. I given what he showed me last year, what I think he's still capable of. Lawrence, Burrow, Herbert, Hurts, Dak, Allen, and Lamar. Like those are the 8 guys that, and the reason I said they're blank check guys, because not all of them have rings. Matter of fact, only one of them has a ring, and that's Mahomes. Not all of them have MVPs. Only 2 of them have them, Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. But I said I've seen them win games with less than ideal circumstances. I've seen them win games when, if there's a bad coaching decision or the defense isn't playing well. I've seen them do that. With respect to Purdy, and I you guys know I'm very high on Purdy, I haven't seen him do necessarily that. I haven't seen him do that. That said, yeah, I think he's in that sort of second tier of guys in terms of guys that can win you a lot of games in the NFL. So that's where I've got him. Apologize for the I've got like a monitor over here. I apologize for the connection issues that we seem to be experiencing. Not sure what's going on with that. It happens from time to time on the show. When you're going live, sometimes the connection isn't always going to be pristine. It's just that's the name of the game sometimes. Did want to move on to another quarterback, and I've got my Steelers hat on. I'll talk about the Steelers. I mean, listen, we're 6-3, got outgained again, but won again somehow, some way. I got to put on my other hat here. I mean, you guys know it's the podcast audience. It's the Dak hat. So this is the 4th straight week I'm doing this now, and there's few things in life I get as much of a pleasure out of than to get to exclaim this to the top of my lungs. Say it with me, y'all. You know how it goes. Say it loud. Say it proud. Rain Dakota Prescott. He did it again. He did. And you're going to say, Bryson, it's the Giants. Come on, man. This is one of the worst teams in the league. They got Tommy DeVito looking like Danny DeVito at quarterback. It's not that very good. Not a very good football team. Yeah, it's not. I'm not going too high behind that. I think the Giants would be better served to lose every game the rest of the season, and they may not. They may not even have to. They may actually have. If they're going to try and win games, they still may end up ending up 2-15 and getting Caleb Williams, which would be a great thing for that franchise and frankly for that city and for the NFC. But if there's 2 things I know Tommy DeVito doesn't do, I can confirm this. Number 1, he doesn't do his laundry. And the second thing I know he doesn't do is play defense. Okay? So he wasn't defending Dak Prescott. This Giants defense did hold Sam Howell, the NFL leader in passing yards, held him to 7. Okay, so I've seen the Giants play well throughout the course of the season. Held Josh Allen, the Bills, to 14 points. Dang it, look. Okay, there we go. I think we're back. Again, the connection just spazzed out at times. So I apologize for the issues we're suffering, but we're trying to stay on task. So I'll repeat this because, again, guys, obviously want to put some of these clips on YouTube. Rain Dakota Prescott did it again. 26 for 35, completions and attempts. 404 yards. That's pretty good. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, 5 total touchdowns on the day. 4 through the air, 1 on the ground. Good run, too, by Dak. Very impressive run in the red zone. Passer rating of 138 and a QBR. Now, QBR, for those of you who don't know, is a stat that takes into account, obviously, your stat line, but that's more for pass rate. It's more pass rating is geared. They also look at the film. They look at, hey, was that throw your fault? If you threw an interception, like Dak threw an interception in the game, that was 100% on Dak. He made a bad read. It takes into account rushing yards, takes into account the whole picture, and it adds context, which is why I love the stat. And they judge it like any standardized test in the United States of America, not named the ACT, 0 to 100. Dak Prescott got a 97 QBR. And here's what Dak's been doing. So I remember that game against San Francisco very well. 5 weeks ago, just a month ago. Wasn't that long ago. Dak and the Cowboys went to San Francisco, got annihilated. Was it 42-10 was the final score? I mean, the Niners ran roughshod on Dallas, and Dak didn't play very well, threw 3 interceptions, and everybody, you can check the tape. Whole football world. Yep, Cowboys can't win with Dak. He's not the guy. They got to trade Dak. They can't extend Dak. And I said, okay, that's a bit much. But then again, what's new in the evaluation of Dak Prescott by many out there? Yeah, since that loss to San Francisco, let's take a look at what Dak Prescott has done. Since week 6, he's thrown for 1,354 yards, 1,300 yards. He has 14 total touchdowns, 12 through the air, 2 on the ground. He's only thrown 2 picks, has a completion percentage of 72%, passer rating of 124.2, and a QBR of 77. He's playing outstanding, and frankly, he's playing the best football of his career. Frankly, if you look at his numbers for the season, it takes into account the San Francisco game. This takes into account the first Giants game in which Dallas's defense and special teams basically won the game for the Cowboys' offense took the field. So that the Cowboys were like, there's no need to take any big risks. That's the difference between my touchdown. Third NFL QBR. Dang it, looks. I apologize. Dang it. There we go. Okay, connection's back. I apologize. This just keeps going in and out. I do not know why, but it's going in and out. It's just one of those days. But like I mentioned, if I froze when I was saying it, the Dak is top 10 in touchdown passes, is top 10 in passing yards, and third in the NFL in QBR. So Dak is playing the best football of his career. He's squarely in the MVP discussion. I think today he's second behind CJ Stroud as we sit here today. But why is Dak playing the best football of his career? Why has he went from last year, obviously leading the league in interceptions? Again, I thought at least half of those were not his fault. Either a tipped pass off a receiver's hands or off somebody's helmet, or somebody ran the wrong route unintentionally or intentionally because they didn't want to get hit. Like, that's just bad. Dak got some bad luck. Now, the interceptions that were his fault, I was the first to criticize him for. It was a game against Washington, threw a bad pick 6, threw a bad pick against Houston that almost cost him the game. Like, I get on Dak when it's time to get on Dak. Why is Dak playing his best football, though? Well, number one, he's an elite quarterback. I've been saying that for as long as the show's been going. But Mike McCarthy has allowed Dak to be what makes him elite, what makes him great, what gives him the best chance to succeed, and what makes Dak his best. Getting him outside the pocket, allowing him, and I have, oh my gosh, how many times have I said on the show, and it drove me crazy last year with Kellen Moore. I said, Kellen, could you let Dak take some shots? Could you let Dak take some shots? McCarthy has. You've seen shots down the field, multiple, to Brandon Cooks, who finally got involved in the offense. You saw a gorgeous ball by Dak Prescott down the right sideline to Michael Gallup. Perfect throw. He's taken shots to CeeDee Lamb this season. He took shots last week against Philadelphia to who's Jalen Tolbert. Dak's getting him involved. I mean, there was 3 plays yesterday where the Cowboys literally moved the pocket. They said, Dak, we are going to design plays. McCarthy says, Dak, we're going to design plays for you to get outside the pocket. That's where he's at his best. Dak's also at his best in general in terms of his mobility. Whether that's McCarthy giving him the freedom to do so in terms of play calling, whether it's just Dak's instincts, whether it's Dak, this is the healthiest he's been since the terrible ankle injury 3 years ago. Like, this looks like old Dak from a mobility standpoint. And when you combine it with the fact that he's improved drastically as a pure thrower from a mechanics perspective and otherwise, like, this is the best version of Dak that we've seen. For the record, I saw this stat today. If I can pull it up. Do we have it? Yeah, there it is. Okay. Dak Prescott since week 6, the offense for the Cowboys, they put up 640 yards of offense yesterday. The Cowboys offense is averaging 361 yards a game. And Dak, of course, as I mentioned, has 14 pass and rushing touchdowns. Both stats are the best in football. I mean, that's kind of where that's where we're at today. That's where Dak's at today. And yes, he's squarely in the MVP discussion. By the way, another stat, last Dak stat I'll give. And again, I think McCarthy deserves credit for a lot of this. I saw this stat from Pro Football Focus. Yeah, they literally, their job is to sit down and watch film all day. That is their job. They're very good at it. You know, Dak Prescott, I heard one pundit, of which I have great respect for. Won't mention this person's name, great respect for. But this person's dead wrong in this assessment of Dak, in that turnovers are in Dak's DNA. It's just who he is. No, it's not. Here's a fun stat for y'all. Dak Prescott is number 1 in the NFL in turnover-worthy play rate. Essentially saying he has the least amount of plays, lowest percentage of plays of any quarterback in football. Lowest percentage of plays in which it was turnover-worthy by the tape. 1.7%. 1.7%. This is who he is. He makes good decisions when given the opportunity to. By the way, Dallas is establishing a little bit of a run game. It's still not quite where they would like to be, but to the Cowboys' credit, I think one of the surprises to me for Dallas, at least this point in the season, is how well their offensive line's playing. Outside of Terrence Steele, I thought they did a great job protecting Dak last week. I thought this week, I mean, this is the Giants, I get that, but Dexter Lawrence is a really good player in the interior. Did a good job against him. Outside the pocket, allow Dak to use his legs. The things that make him great, use that to your advantage. Don't be like Kellen Moore and say, I want you to fit the way I want you to be. That's a great lesson for life. Whether it's a relationship, whether it's a friend group, whether it's where you work. Whoever allows you to be the best version of yourself and buys into the best version of yourself, that's who you want to be with. And Dak Prescott has his match in that regard in Mike McCarthy. And for the record, you're seeing it with CeeDee Lamb too. A better Dak means a better CeeDee Lamb. How about this for CeeDee Lamb? Okay. This is fun for you Cowboys fans out there. Do we have it? Yep. CeeDee Lamb. I gave you Dak stats since week 6. CeeDee Lamb stats since week 6. He's tied for first in the NFL in catches. He's first in receiving yards. He has 4 touchdowns total through the air and on the ground, and has 22 receptions of 15 or more yards, also first in the NFL. And for the record, I mentioned Dak stats and CD stats. I should have added further context to this. 3 weeks ago, they didn't even play because they were on a bye. So this is in a 3-game stretch, and they're doing what they're doing. I mean, it's slowly evolved into the best quarterback-receiver tandem in football. I mean, it really has. I mean, Tua Tyreek is good. It's not good. It's great. Hurts to Brown is as elite as they come. Is it fair to say Dak to Lamb is number 1 in that regard? Maybe. Dak Prescott, number 2 today in the MVP frontrunner, in the MVP race. And in general, am I surprised? Of course I'm not surprised. And I love that McCarthy, too, because I criticized him after that win when Dallas beat the Chargers. In week 6, remember the Monday night game when Dak had no protection, no running game, the whole bit, and everybody thought Dak was the problem in Dallas. He's the weak link in Dallas, and he played excellent, led a game-winning drive. And I criticized McCarthy after that game. I said, man, Dak was overcoming bad play calling too. Too conservative does, and we get on McCarthy. You're like, oh, the only reason he's got a Super Bowl is because of Aaron Rodgers. Maybe, but he's certainly an incompetent Packers fans. You want McCarthy or you want Matt LaFleur? Green Bay's leading the league in penalties. More on them later on the show. McCarthy's been around the league long enough, and as any smart coach does, he adjusted. Kyle Shanahan adjusted during the bye. I bet Andy Reid and Nick Sirianni, they're going to adjust, which I can't wait for that game next week. Your Super Bowl rematch. It's going to be fun. Mike McCarthy said, I'm going to let Dak be Dak. Move the pocket, take shots down the field. And what a shock. Dak's playing the best football he's ever played. CeeDee Lamb also playing the best football he's ever played. Dallas is very much within. People are like, oh, they beat a bad team. Dak's been doing this. Did it against the Chargers, did it against the Rams, did it against the Eagles, did it against the Giants. At some point, when something happens over and over and over, when someone tells you who they are, believe them. Is that the Maya Angelou quote? Dak's telling you who he is. Dak's showing you who he is. What he does. A lot of comments here. Where we got? Okay, my man Philip, Cowboys fan here, is in the comments. He says, now Dak has arguably been the best quarterback in the league since week 5 against the Niners, but even if the Cowboys go 17-0 and win by 50 points every game, it will not matter unless they win in the playoffs. That is totally fair. I understand that, which is, for the record, why I picked them to win the NFC before the season. I said they win the NFC, lose to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, for the simple fact that I think this defense, and we saw it yesterday, again, it's Tommy DeVito, so I'm not going to it's Tommy DeVito. And the defense, frankly, didn't play that well against Philadelphia last week, but given their upside, Micah Parsons, Stephon Gilmore had a good game yesterday. Their upside is capable of being top 5 in the league. And offensively, Brandon Cooks seems to look like the old Brandon Cooks. CeeDee Lamb is undeniably one of the 3 or 4 best receivers in football. Dak is slowly pushing to be a top 5 quarterback in football with the retirement of Brady, the injury to Rodgers, the regression of Allen. And it's kind of all breaking for Dak to slide into that 5 spot. But listen, that's fair. Philip, but as a Cowboy, he said Cowboys fans need to enjoy weeks like this. I know I do. And in all caps, how about them Cowboys? Do we have the Cowboys soundbite, the Jimmy Johnson soundbite right here? How about them Cowboys? Yeah! There it is. There it is. Yeah, Cowboys fans are happy today, and they should be happy today. There's no doubt about it. Patrick Brown, we had career stats versus the Giants. It was a beautiful sight to see. Indeed, it was. Philip's bringing up a point I was bringing up. He says, and another thing is when the O-line is healthy, we have a top 5 line in football, but health is the biggest problem with our O-line. Tyron Smith's older. Zach Martin's older. Terrence Steele had a really bad day yesterday against the Eagles. Had some mistakes yesterday, but I still think he's a Pro Bowl caliber guy. So what else we got? Patrick says Carolina's in for a long day next week. Bryce Young. I see what you did there, Patrick. Bryce Young isn't Reich in the fold as well. Playing off of. And that's something worth bringing up too. That's something worth bringing up as well with the Cowboys is the fact that if you look at their upcoming schedule, and I said this after the Philly game. Did I not say this verbatim last week after I lost to Philly? This notion, the NFC East race is over. Eagles are going to win the East. Cowboys are just going to hope to place as high as the 5 seed. I said, careful. Giants took care of business against the Giants. Next week against Carolina, they'll probably the worst team in football today. Certainly the worst record in football. Washington's a little dicey. I'll tell you, that was my upset of the week, and I came darn close, although I did win in taking Washington in the points. But Washington's very frisky. Thanksgiving Day, anything can happen in that regard. Seattle's a tough matchup, but then you got Philadelphia, and that's give me the game where it kind of sort of a crossroads game for Dallas, where if they win these next 3, which they're going to win next week against the Panthers, I assume they're going to beat Washington, and then Seattle's a tough matchup, but I think Dallas is a little bit better than Seattle, who I like more than most. And then it's going to come down to Philly, because after Philly, you got at Buffalo, then you got at Miami, then you got, is it Detroit after that? Yeah, then you got Detroit. We see what they're doing right now. You got Detroit after that, and then at Washington. So this stretch of the games, Cowboys need to take care of business here, and then the last 5 weeks is about as tough a stretch as there is in football. But, let's see. Grady Edwards, what's up, Grady? He's in the comments. Any thoughts on Deion Sanders? I love the man, but it might be time to chill the hype a little bit. He's lost 4 games in a row. I think, Grady, the hype has chilled. There's no question about that. You mentioned the 4 straight losses. Deion, by the way, they lost to Arizona. For the record, 21st ranked Arizona at the gun on a walk-off field goal. I think it was 34-31 Wildcats over Colorado. Deion said after the game, and he's not wrong. He said, listen, we don't know how to win right now. And listen, were people like me a little too quick to jump on the hype in terms of could they, win 8 games? Yeah, probably a little too quick. Obviously too quick. They can't get to 8 wins now. The best they could hope for is 6-6, and that is highly, highly unlikely to happen when you look at their next 2 games. Let me check super fast, because I think they got Utah at the end of the season. Hold on, let me pull up the Pac-12 real quick. Excuse me. Colorado's got Washington State on Friday. Good chance they could compete in that game, but Washington State probably wins, and there's no chance Colorado beats Utah at Utah. So, Colorado, that said, future, there's a to move off of that. We just did back and it coming back to the fold here. Hang on just a second. There we go. Okay, we're back. We're back. Listen, it's gonna keep going out. I don't know if it's these might be the people that's about to hear this might be Ravens fans about to hear my Baltimore take. Is Devin, are you behind this? Come on now. So listen, connections going in and out, it happens. But yeah, the hype for the future, I don't think should temper the hype for this season. There's obviously very much should. But still, I don't think it's a disastrous season for Colorado. You got to realize the Pac-12, and it props the Pac-12. This is their send-off. It's one heck of a send-off. Washington's awesome. Oregon's awesome. Utah's really good. Oregon State's really good. Arizona's been one of the bigger surprises in college football, the way they played. Even USC, who's not ranked at this point, Caleb Williams is the story of college football in terms of being the best quarterback in the sport. Like, even the mid-level teams in that conference are very good. So, in fairness to Colorado, this is we always think of the SEC as the cream of the crop in terms of the better teams in college football all in one conference. This year, it's been the Pac-12. That said, it's about to get disbanded, and it's probably going to end up being the Big Ten and the SEC for years to come with some of the conference realignment. But yeah, that's where I'm at on Colorado. I'm going to try and see. This was a weird weekend for me because it starts with my Vols, Lord have mercy, getting absolutely throttled. Was it 36-7? And there was some petty business that none of you would even care about. I understand that. Between Coach Heupel at Tennessee and Coach Dirkwitz, I think is how you say his name. I could be getting that wrong. Missouri's head coach. Some back and forth between them. There's no love lost there. So we get throttled there. The blow gets softened because Georgia destroyed Ole Miss, so we never had a chance to win the SEC East anyway. We play Georgia next week. Yay. Then the Warriors lose to the Cavs, so we get swept in the season series. That wasn't fun. But then the Steelers win. That was exciting. Won some money on that game. And then the Cowboys win with Dak Prescott. And I'm feeling good about that. And then the weekend gets bookended by Golden State getting the final score is very misleading, getting outplayed the entire game against Minnesota. Listen, could the Warriors could Steph get a little help offensively? Just a little help. Just a little help. I mean, think about this, y'all. The Warriors, you guys know I'm the biggest Warriors fan on earth. The Warriors have had one player, Dario Saric, other than Steph Curry, score more than 20 points in a game this season. One. Dario Saric. That's it. He's coming off the bench, too. The Warriors bench is actually pretty good. It's a big reason I'm optimistic about this team's chances to compete. But Clay, bro, what's up? Come on now. Come on. It's a contract year for you, man. Step it up. CP3, I don't expect to average 20. That's Kuminga. Man, I had you as the most improved player of the league. What's up, man? Andrew Wiggins, where you been? 6 points. We got an in-season tournament game against Minnesota tomorrow. Steph needs a little help. Come on now. He's averaging 30. Need a little help. Okay. Off my Warriors rant. Brief Warriors rant. Grady, if there's a Grady says if there's a time to bring back Spygate, now is the time for Coach Belichick. That is hysterical, Grady. You're too much, man. There's a time to bring back Spygate. That's incredible. I'll talk about the Patriots when I recap Week 10. I didn't think they were worth giving an entire segment to. Grady, any thoughts on James Harden and the Clippers thus far? They're 0-4. They are bad late game situationally. They're terrible defensively. Meanwhile, the Sixers have nothing but assets. They have the best record in the East. Tyrese Maxey just dropped a 50-burger last night. Embiid is playing unbelievable to possibly turn those assets into a star player at the trading deadline. Meanwhile, the Clippers have no assets, no identity. Their top two players are injury-prone, and their best two players after that are playoff failures. Other than that, it's going great for the Clippers. It's going great. By the way, just lost to the Grizzlies yesterday. Grizzlies had one win coming in yesterday. They had the coach cursing out officials after the game to the media, and they still beat the Clippers. Love it. I probably don't love it as much as my guy Barry. Shout out to Barry, All Even podcast host, co-founder of The Grid. Listen, I hope none of you ever meet somebody in your life that hates you the way Barry Grant Jr. hates the Clippers. I hate the Clippers myself, but it's pure comedy for coming from him and his criticism. It's fantastic. I love it. But no, I'm not in the. I mean, listen. I probably didn't expect it to be 0-4 in all honesty, but I did expect it to be somewhat of a disaster. And I had the Clippers missing the playoffs. Go back and look. I had them missing the playoffs before the year started. Now, forget about it. They're done. They were never. The fact that they had the 5th best odds to win the finals when they made the Harden trade. Go back and look. They had the 5th best odds. They were behind Boston, Milwaukee, Denver, and Phoenix. I still don't buy into Phoenix. We see they're not looking so great right now. But 5th. What are we doing? But I'm not surprised at all, Grady. Let's move on to Lamar Jackson, the Ravens, who lost in about as heartbreaking a way as you possibly could, although I think I've got another comment here from Grady. Or I'm sorry, this is from Patrick. Oh, yeah, there he is. He's talking about the Patriots. He says, Whack Jones. I love this. Whack Jones strikes again. The look of Robert Kraft and Coach Bill Belichick said it all. Well, Belichick's no innocent dove in all of this, but I'll talk about that a little later. Bob Kraft is just searching for answers. He's like, man, the fall from grace, man, it's been hard. It's been hard. But I'll talk about the Patriots when I go do my Week 10 recap. I did want to dedicate an entire segment, though, to the Ravens. Because they, again, like I mentioned, they lost about as heartbreaking a way as you possibly could to a division rival, to the Cleveland Browns. This despite, listen, Baltimore is the one of, if not the hottest team in football right now, up there with Jacksonville and Minnesota. But listen, they go in this game. They're up 17-3. They're playing good football. They got a pick 6 on the first play of the game, essentially, against Deshaun Watson. They enter the fourth quarter. Actually, at one point, they scored in the fourth quarter on a Gus Edwards touchdown. 11 minutes left in the game, up 14 points, and they end up losing. They end up giving up 16 unanswered points, and the Browns walk it off on a field goal by Dustin Hopkins. So, first of all, and I'll talk about my Steelers a little later. Matter of fact, let me go and put my Steelers hat back on. Dak hat, I'll put you off to the side for a moment. The AFC North is about as difficult and brutal division as there is. But props to Cleveland, stuck with the running game. Deshaun Watson made some plays with his legs late. But for Baltimore, and they are undeniably the better story. The good news for the Ravens, they're still first in the division. They're second in the conference, so it's not skies falling. They didn't lose any major players due to injury. Odell Beckham looked as healthy as he's looked in years with the Ravens yesterday. So there's still positives to take from losses. Not moral victories, but positives to take. There's no question about that. Here's something that's a little alarming to me if I'm a Baltimore Ravens fan, is the fact that if you look at since 2020, so this is a big sample size, 2021 to now middle of 2023, and this is the second time that they've done what I'm about to tell you. They've blown 10 double-digit leads, 10 since 2020, including 2 this year, one of them being against my Steelers, which I'm not mad about that at all, but blew a double-digit lead against my Steelers way back in week 5, I think it was, and then blew a double-digit fourth quarter lead against the Cleveland Browns this week, again, both divisional rivals. This is a little bit of a problem for Baltimore. It falls on Lamar Jackson, who threw a pick 6 in this game. Falls on John Harbaugh. Again, when we talk about teams being bad situationally, the Chargers are the epitome of this. We saw yesterday, at least defensively. When we talk about teams being bad situationally, that falls on the head coach. It does. It falls on the quarterback with throwing that pick 6 to tie the game for the Browns, or not tie the game, but cut it to a 1-point deficit. It falls on the defense. A defense for the Ravens, which coming in this week, I was just raving. This is the reason I had the Ravens as the best team in football. Number 1 in the NFL in scoring defense. And they give up 33. Now, 6 of those came on a pick 6, but okay, subtract the 6, that's still 27 points to a Deshaun Watson quarterback team. It's not good. It's not going to work. And that's an issue for Baltimore that I mentioned with the 49ers earlier, that they are at their best, the most dominant team, the best team in the NFL, at their best. But again, you're not always going to be at your best. You're not always going to give an A-plus performance on a week-to-week basis. It's the NFL. It's hard to win games. It's hard to give great performances. But I said, listen, trailing in the fourth quarter, they struggle. The Ravens are almost the opposite of that. Like when the Niners enter the fourth quarter and they've got a lead on you, forget about it. That they are going to strangle you to death. They are going to get that W. Come hell or high water, they're going to win. Ravens, you enter the fourth quarter and forget close. If the game's within reach, be honest with yourself, Ravens fans, aren't you a little uncomfortable? You're kind of sitting the edge of your seats like, I don't feel great about this. I don't know if I love our chances here. That's where they're at. Again, 10 blown double-digit leads. since 2020. That's a 3.5-year sample size now. So for Baltimore, that's something, and I talked about this last year. I remember at the beginning of last year, they blew like a 21-point lead to Tua and the Dolphins. And I remember saying, like, and that was their defense was not near now near then what it is now. But listen, I still think Baltimore's a contender. I still think they're the best team in that division, even over Cleveland, my Steelers, and the Bengals. That said, that is something that, listen, Bengals fans are kind of down the dumps today. And listen, for good reason. They're last in the division. They lost a game that they probably should have won against Houston, even though the great CJ Stroud was fantastic in that game. But games like this, if you're a Bengals fan, by the way, Bengals-Ravens, Thursday Night Football, that's as good as it gets. Okay, Thursday Night Football, we finally get a great game. That's going to be a fun one. But if you're a Bengals fan, you're sitting back and saying, okay, guys, if we beat Baltimore, I mean, we're basically, what was it, a game and a half back? And given how bad they are in the fourth quarter, we have questions about Lamar's ability to stay healthy. We can get back in this. For the record, Steelers Nation, I'll sort of elaborate on this. We may actually have a shot at the division if you look at our upcoming schedule. But that's a game you can't lose if you're Baltimore. I get it's a division rival. I get how great the Browns defense is and how great Myles Garrett is. He was spectacular yesterday. But that's a game up 14 in the fourth quarter with 11 minutes to go. You can't lose that game. And that falls on the defense, it falls on the quarterback, and it falls on the head coach. There's nobody that is free of blame here. Poor execution, poor decision-making, and it comes down to everybody involved. So, again, Baltimore second in the conference to Kansas City today. So it's not the sky isn't falling if you're a Ravens fan, but that is, given the trend in the recent years, not just the trend, kind of the reality for the Ravens in recent years, that's a bit concerning. It is. Got a couple of comments here. Or I got a comment here, Patrick. He says, Ravens just let it get away. Bad loss for Baltimore. You got to win that game and close it out. You do. You got to execute better, and for the record, if you look at after Gus Edwards ran that in. By the way, Ravens are up 14 in the first half, 15 in the third quarter, and then back again 14. They're up 31-17 in the fourth quarter. If you look at their drives after that, offensively and defensively after that, I mean, it was a total collapse. I'm not going to go as far. You know me. I think choke is the most overused word in the sports dictionary. I've always defined choke this way. You were supposed to win, and not only did you not win, the moment looked too big for you. Like you caved in on the pressure. I don't think that's why the Ravens lost. I think it was just bad execution. But if you look at after they went up 30, after Gus Edwards ran it in to make it 31-17 with 11 and a half minutes to go, Browns drove down the field in 6 plays, only took them 2.5 minutes. Touchdown. 2 plays after that, Lamar threw the pick 6 to Greg Newsome, and Dustin Hopkins missed the extra point. Then the Ravens, it looks like they're maybe going to run the clock out, right? They've not run the clock out, but they've burned 3 minutes off, and then the drive stalls short of midfield. They got a punt, and then props to Deshaun and the Browns. They drive it in 12 plays and run the rest of the game clock out and walk it off with Dustin Hopkins on the field goal. So concerning loss if you're Baltimore, just given recent years. That's where I'm at. They're still a contender, though. They're still a contender. But they will definitely not be returning number 1 on Bryson's best 10. They were the only team other than the Chiefs and 49ers to this point who've been number 1 on Bryson's best 10. And, of course, Wednesday, we will have a brand new number 1. Or maybe not a new number 1. It still could be Kansas City. I haven't decided on that yet. Could be Philadelphia. Listen, there's plenty. San Francisco, maybe. Who knows? San Francisco was 8th last week. They may be number 1 this week. So you have to tune in to the Wednesday show. Usually do Bryson's Best 10 around 7 Eastern. My show obviously starts at 6 Eastern. It usually is about an hour in before I do Bryson's Best 10 every week on Wednesdays on Carving It Up Live. Before I predict tonight's game, let's do a recap of Week 10 NFL action. So the morning game, first of all, Germany, I am... On behalf of the United States of America, I apologize for the product that we presented to y'all after what was a very entertaining game last week. Dolphins Chiefs. Listen, it was 21-14. It wasn't like an offensive fireworks show, but it was still fun. There was defensive touchdowns. The Dolphins had a chance to win at the end. You had a very good quarterback in Tua and an awesome quarterback in Mahomes. You had Travis Kelce there, Mike McDaniel. It was a fun game. 2 very good teams, 2 teams that we consider to be, at least at bare minimum for Miami, fringe contenders, for Kansas City, the defending champs. I apologize that after that, you guys had to witness this. You guys and gals, all you in Germany, we greatly, greatly apologize. And I hope this won't hurt foreign relations with that nation. But Colts won 10-6. And again, the game was as bad as the score would indicate. 10-6 over the Patriots. Gardner Minshew didn't even play that well. Threw a pick. Bad passer rating is in the 60s. But it was even worse for the Patriots. So I will use your term, Patrick, because I know you're in the comments. I will use your term, Whack Jones. Listen, folks know I haven't been on a Mac Jones guy. I'm not going to crush the guy. It takes a lot not to, but I'm not going to crush the guy today. I've said since the day he stepped into the NFL. Heck, before that, as he's a backup. Yeah, the numbers at Alabama were awesome. He completed something like 77% of his passes. Yeah, helps when you have Devontae Smith who won. Think about this. Mac Jones put up the numbers he put up. Alabama didn't lose a game, won the national championship, and the receiver, the guy who plays the dependent position, Devontae Smith, was who won the Heisman, not Mac Jones. Told you all you need to know. Devontae Smith there helps. Helps when you have, again, obviously terrible stuff has happened off the field regarding this player, but Henry Ruggs, doesn't hurt to have him in the lineup. You had Najee Harris, kind of helps. Best offensive line in college football helps too. Best defense in college football. Best coach in, history of college football, Mr. Nicholas Saban. That helps as well. There was nothing I saw on tape for Mac Jones. I said that coming into the draft. He's immobile. He has a noodle arm. Listen, I always said about Mac, he was accurate. Now I can't even say that about him anymore. And now I didn't know this was the problem in Alabama. God, the kid's leadership is horrendous. You saw him, again, last week, cursing out teammates. This week, he was the one getting cursed out by Bill O'Brien. And when it was all said and done, he was benched. And we don't have the film of this. The second thought, I probably should have had it because it was... I can't even put into words how bad the throws he was making were. He threw one interception. He threw an interception. I mean, it's like a pillowy throw. Just fell right in the guy's lap on the goal line. But there was a play when New England is in the red zone. I think it was Hunter Henry. It was one of the tight ends. Wide open on the right corner. Right back corner of the end zone. I mean, the throw is not... It should have been... I can't believe the guy dropped it. I guess that's why he's playing defense. But, I mean, it's as bad of a throw as you can have. Listen, I'm close. Very, very close on Mac Jones to where I was last year on Zach Wilson when I proclaimed that he is not an NFL quarterback. Forget backup. I said he's an XFL quarterback. He's not an NFL quarterback. I'm darn close on that. And by the way, it's not like Bailey Zappi's much better. And people are like, oh, you were the Bailey Zappi guy preseason. No, I said Mac and Zappi. I said there's not a gap. There's not. We got him the Patriots. Oh, you had Matt Patricia as the offensive coordinator. How is Mac Jones going to succeed? Okay, let's bring in Bill O'Brien. He's an actual NFL OC. He's been a head coach of the NFL. He's gotten some pretty bad quarterbacks by NFL starting standards. Brock Osweiler. One year he had Brian Hoyer. Got those guys to the playoffs. And, it helps to have that guy in. And the Patriots are horrendous offensively. By the way, let's just check Mac just for the fun of it. Not really the fun of it, but Mac Jones' stat line. 15-20, 170 yards, an interception that should have been 2, and a QBR 0-100 of 25. And Bill Belichick is not an innocent dove in all of this. It's time. I said this after they got throttled by Dallas 38-3 back in week 4, and I maintain it today. It's time to move on from Belichick. It is. 81-95 without Tom Brady in his career. He made the playoffs one time pre-Brady, one time in Cleveland. He has made it one time post-Brady. For the record, in that game, they got beat by 30 against Buffalo. What more? I've compared Belichick and Reed for years. I remember doing this when the Chiefs and Bucks played in the Super Bowl. I think I remember doing this. That I said, had the Chiefs won that game, they didn't. They got blown up by Tampa Bay. And, of course, have gone on to since win another Super Bowl. But I said, I don't know what the argument is for Belichick to be over Reed. You say, oh, count the rings. Okay, well, if we counted the rings in the NBA, then Bill Russell's the GOAT. Like, count the rings is not the greatest argument at all times to use. Belichick without Brady, Reed without Mahomes. Reed has been to multiple. I did a segment on this months ago, but Reed's been to multiple conference championship games. He's been to a Super Bowl without Mahomes. Again, Donovan McNabb was a good quarterback. It didn't hurt to have Andy Reid. Let's just put it that way. We saw it Donovan McNabb without Reed. didn't work so well. But, and then Belichick without Brady. I mean, some bunch of losing seasons in Cleveland, bunch of losing seasons in New England. This is who he is. Was it? I forget who it was. There was a Patriot years ago after Tom left. I'm forgetting who. Was it Asante Samuel? I don't know if it was Asante Samuel or somebody else that said Belichick is just another coach without Brady. And I agree with him then. I certainly agree with him now. He's just another coach. He's refused to adapt to the modern NFL. Not only refused to adapt to the modern NFL, refuses to give up power. I mean, he's the de facto general manager in Foxborough. Like, he's the guy making the personnel decisions. These are his players that he handpicked, Mac Jones included. So, Patrick mentioned the comments. Bob Kraft just with a blank stare up in the booth, like, man, what's going on? Well, what's going on is you have a terrible quarterback and you have a below-average head coach. I mean, you do. There's about 20 coaches, honest to God, that I would take over Mac Jones. 20 coaches. I'd take way more than 20 quarterbacks over Mac Jones. I'd take 40 quarterbacks before I'd take Mac Jones, maybe more. I'd take 15 to 20 coaches before I'd take Belichick. I really would. I had the Patriots at 6-11 this season, and that seems quite generous. By the way, New England, for the record, the Patriots were third in their division last year. So they have a last place schedule. They have a third place schedule. It's brutal the rest of the way. For a third place schedule, it's brutal. So they have this game's going to be awful. 2 weeks from now, it's Patriots-Giants. We're going to have Mac Jones or Bailey Zappi versus Tommy DeVito. Whew, you bet whoever loses, congratulations, because you're one step closer to Caleb Williams than the other. This game may end up in a tie for it's all said and done. Then they have the Chargers, who are poorly coached, but Justin Herbert, Mac Jones, I'll let you take your pick there. Then they got Pittsburgh on a short week. That's not gonna be a win for the Patriots. Then they have Kansas City after that. That's also a loss. At Denver, that's a loss as well. At the Bills, I get they beat Buffalo. This week. A few weeks ago. That was more on Buffalo than it was on New England. And I said, even backup quarterbacks have good games, even not below average, even mediocre to good teams, or not mediocre, even playoff-ish teams have bad afternoons, bad Sundays. The Buffalo Bills did. And then they finished with the Jets, and who knows where those teams will be at by then. I expect that, honestly, to be Belichick's final game as a Patriots coach. It's just, I've seen a lot of people say, is it rock bottom for the Patriots? Listen, I've been thinking it was rock bottom for a while, but it's like the low just keeps getting lower. The quarterback's a poor leader. Frankly, he's not a very good player. And the coach is below average. He's below average. Yeah. Patrick's just going on in the comments about Whack Jones. That's a great nickname, Patrick. I'm gonna have to give it to you there. He came up with that a few weeks ago. That's pretty good. Oh, that's a long way of saying, Germany, we apologize. Okay, we apologize. All right, what other games do we have? Buccaneers blew out the Titans. I didn't see a ton of this game. Baker Mayfield, though, listen, but I said I picked Tennessee to win going in this game, and obviously I was dead wrong, and Will Levis turned back into a pumpkin. This is why I said this, y'all. He blew out Atlanta. Then he played well against my Steelers. I said, let's not do with Will Levis what we did with Jordan Love. Remember, Jordan Love played awesome against the Bears, lost to Atlanta the next week, but played pretty darn well outside the fourth quarter. I said, guys, there's only a couple starts. Like, let's not lose our collective mind. 9 starts from CJ Stroud. He's the guy. We've seen enough of a sample size to know he's really good. Let's slow it down, Will Levis. There's a reason he fell the second round. A lot of that had to do with character flaws. A lot of that had to do with intangibles rather than tangibles. That the things you couldn't see as like leadership and stuff. That was a problem. But all that to say, I didn't pick Tampa Bay to win. But I said this coming in though. I've never been a Baker guy. Guy's playing well this year. I'm gonna have to give it to him. He's playing well. He's keeping Tampa Bay right in the mix. Only a half game out of the lead in the NFC South, but Baker's thrown 14 touchdowns, only 5 picks, 2,000 yards passing. Like, Baker's playing well. He's got Mike Evans. That doesn't hurt. Chris Godwin and company. But props to Baker. Like Baker is very. Excuse me. I think of Baker as a not slightly better. more talented quarterback than Mac Jones, but similar stylistically. Now, Mac's a bigger guy than Baker is, but stylistically they're similar. But Baker's a guy that's, sometimes we get on players a little too much, and I could be guilty of this as well, for the record. But we talk about, oh, this guy's really immature. Well, most college kids are. By the way, I'm a college kid. Most college kids are immature. Baker certainly was. But he's grown a lot because guess what? People can grow. People can change. People can get better. And to see how Baker is involved in that regard, nothing but love and respect for him. Like he's always been kind of that underdog guy. He's always had a chip on his shoulder. But I feel like he's channeled that in a really good way. So really, hats off to Baker and props to the Bucs. I thought Tampa Bay was going to be one of the laughing stocks of the NFL. Dead wrong on that. Dead wrong. They've already surpassed the number of wins I had for them coming in, which was 3. They have 4 wins thus far. And again, very much in the NFC South picture. Now, whoever wins that division ain't winning the playoff game. I'll say that much. They're not beating Dallas, Philly, or Seattle. The 3 most likely teams to be in that class. But a good win for Tampa Bay. What other games do we have? Oh, okay. Here we go. Second straight week I get to do this. Here we go. Say it with me, y'all. I did it last week. We could say it again. Robert Joshua Dobbs. First start as a Viking, and all he did was beat the New Orleans Saints as a 3-point underdog, I might add. But Joshua Dobbs, all right, 23-34, 268, a touchdown through the air. By the way, ran for another touchdown. A circus play. Reminded me of a play against Georgia years ago in 2016. Very similar. It was just running around in the red zone and somehow found a crease, scored on the left side, played, is a great runner as well. So he basically accounted for over 300 yards, had a touchdown passing, touchdown running, QBR of 88 from 0 to 100, and a passer rating just over 100 at 101. Listen, folks are like, slow the Dobbs love, slow it down. He's a really good backup. To use my own terminology or my own phrase, low-end starter, high-end backup. No. I said this after the Cardinals beat Dallas in week 3. I said, given what I've seen, especially given the circumstances in Arizona, which were awful, that's a starting quarterback. That is one of the 32 best in football. He is. Big arm, big athlete, big, strong athlete. Obviously, his smarts, that speaks for. He's the smartest player in the league. He's a rocket scientist. He's an aerospace engineer major at the University of Tennessee. He's a genius. He's been to NASA. He's interned at NASA multiple times. NASA, by the way, called him the Pastronaut. I call him Space Dobbs, but I'll say this. He once again, 2 straight weeks now, the 3rd time the season, dominated the competition. Joshua Dobbs, special yesterday. Again, I'm not saying he's a special player, for the record. That's reserved for a select few. But that's a starting quarterback in the league. And frankly, if I'm Minnesota, look, you won 5 straight games. Your defense is playing well. You got your quarterback for the rest of the season. Given that Kirk Cousins is older, Achilles injury, he's a free agent this spring. This, to me, for Minnesota, obviously you try and get the playoffs, of course. That's the whole reason they traded for Dobbs, because they're like, we're too good to miss the playoffs. But given what he's doing, again, with no Justin Jefferson, and he's doing what he's doing against good defenses. Atlanta's an excellent defense. Saints have a ton of elite players defensively. Cam Jordan and DeMario Davis, like they've got some real players on that side of the ball. The Saints do. But for Minnesota, to me, this is a bigger picture than just trying to make the playoffs. It is evaluate and see, okay, we're going to be good enough to, at bare minimum, compete for the playoffs. So we're not going to get one of the top end guys unless we make a big trade up to go get like a Bo Nix or I don't know where Jordan Travis is slated, the kid out of Florida State. Maybe get a Jordan Travis. You're certainly not going to get Caleb or May or Penix. You're not going to get any of those guys, I assume. See if this is your guy. I mean, kid finally gets an opportunity to be put in its position to succeed. He's got a smart coach in Kevin O'Connell, who I think is in the race for Coach of the Year for the record. He's got Jordan Addison, who's been arguably the best or second best rookie receiver in the league. You've got Justin Jefferson coming back from injury. TJ Hawkinson's an excellent tight end. This Vikings defense coached by Brian Flores, who should be a head coach next year. I'm going to put that out there. Just keeps getting better week by week. They might have found their guy in Minnesota post Kirk Cousins. I love this kid. What else do we have? Cardinals beating the Falcons. I did pick Arizona. Kyler Murray came back and played excellent in this game. Had a 3rd down scramble in the 4th quarter to help get the Cardinals in a field goal range where Matt Prater won it. But Kyler played well. Again, did throw an interception, but was good with his legs. Put together that game-winning drive at the end. Listen, Atlanta, we know, and I've said it all season long. They're no question going to be drafting a quarterback in the 2024 draft. But what Kyler did with his legs, with his arm, for first game in almost a calendar year, coming back from an ACL injury. I've never been the biggest Kyler fan from an intangible standpoint. I do still think the Cardinals need to draft a quarterback, but still. This kid can play at a very high level at his best, but that was, I still think the Cardinals are really screwing themselves over because they have a highly coveted asset in Murray, which they can get a lot of picks for and maybe some players for. We saw what freaking Chicago got for the Carolina pick where they drafted Bryce Young. That win yesterday really hurt their Caleb Williams odds a lot. Chicago still is the first pick. I think Arizona still is in second, and the Giants are in that race. The Patriots are. That didn't help. That did not help Arizona's case. Detroit, you know what I got to do. Okay? It is the kneecaps were bitten. And, well, you know what? Dan Campbell, Oprah, you tell me what happened.
Kneecap.
Kneecaps were bitten in Los Angeles, California. So I took Detroit to cover. It ended up being a push. They were 3-point favorites. They won the game by 3, so it was a push. But I mentioned Stroud as the MVP frontrunner, Dak Prescott in second. I think we need to have a serious conversation about Goff in third. Goff has been outstanding this season. I mean, you talk about, again, I've said, you give this dude, he's not a very mobile player. He's kind of the last of a dying breed as far as just pure pocket passers. There's not many guys like Jared Goff. Certainly guys not like Jared Goff playing to the level that he is. But a couple touchdown passes. The Lions ran for over 200 yards, averaged like 8 yards a play, something crazy against that Chargers defense. I'll talk about the Chargers in just a moment, but Detroit 7-2, very much in the race to get the 1 seed in the NFC, considering their upcoming schedule, which is, I mean, they should be favored. I'm looking at their schedule right now. They should be an underdog twice the rest of the season. And one of those is a little dicey. So they've got the Bears. They should win. Packers on Thanksgiving. They should win convincingly. At the Saints, I think Detroit will be favored to win that game, assuming they're healthy. At the Bears, they'll be favored. Home against Denver, they'll be favored. At Minnesota, the way they're playing might be a slight, like a 1.5 point favorite, but we'll see. At Dallas, they'll be a dog. And then home against the Vikings, they'll be a favorite. Detroit will. But they very much they can absolutely get the 1 seed. And I've been telling y'all since the spring of 2023, this is a Super Bowl contender. They will get to the NFC Championship game. I think if they match up against San Francisco, they can. And frankly, I predicted them before the season, will beat San Francisco. Detroit Lions, great win yesterday. As for the Chargers, I mean, was this not the typical, aside from a dumb call late by Brandon Staley, aside from that, was this not the typical Chargers loss? Justin Herbert's awesome. With respect to Jared Goff, the best quarterback on the field was the losing quarterback in Justin Herbert. Threw 4 touchdown passes. I mean, he's amazing. Had a pass rating in the 100s and a QBR in the 80s. So he was awesome. Put up 38 points. Converted fourth down after fourth down. Keenan Allen was spectacular. 175 yards, receiving in a couple tuds. And Brandon Staley, who coaches the defense, it fell apart. How about this stat, though, for Brandon Staley? And this is where I say, if we're debating about whether or not to fire you as a head coach, to me, I said this last week, and by the way, this is not my original idea. I got this, Colin Cowherd's been saying this shout out to Cowherd, who's one of my idols in the broadcasting business. Colin Cowherd said this for a long time, and I fully believe it to be true. Bare minimum, you have to be good coaching your side of the ball. Like, if you're a defensive coordinator, you need to have a good defense. If you're a head coach, but you're a former DC or defensive coach, your defense has to be good. Same thing with an offensive coach. Brandon Staley is a defensive coach, came from the Rams. The Chargers, who are a notoriously cheap organization, the Spanos family, they have spent the second most money on defense the last 2 years of any team in football. Since hiring Staley, that's 3 years, or 2.5 years essentially. They are 31st, second last in the NFL in yards per play allowed, and 4th worst in points per drive. I think we know Brandon Staley needs to go at this point, but even coaches we don't think are good. Let's think of an example. I don't know, just off the top of my head. Like Matt Nagy years ago in Chicago. Chicago fans hated Matt Nagy. I was always a Matt Nagy defender. I still think he's a pretty good coach. Chicago's offense was still competent. The man got Mitch Trubisky to the playoffs twice. He's a good coach. Chicago ran him off. He's a good coach. Staley can't get inside the ball. I mean, I'm about to talk about my Steelers in just a second. Mike Tomlin's the man. Pittsburgh's offense can't do anything. But Pittsburgh's defense, it's incredible. It's a mirror of their head coach. It's awesome. It's incredible. Brandon Staley can't even get his side of the ball right. I mean, it's bad. It's bad in LA. The last thing on the Lions, I see I got a comment. I'll respond to that in just a second. Last thing about the Lions, though, and this is what I haven't. Few things have I ever been so wrong on than Dan Campbell. Because, I mean, you heard the soundbite there, and I play that after every Lions win. The whole, we're going to bite some kneecaps. And I like a lot of folks, but this does not, this does not get rid of the blame from, in my case. I made fun of him after that press conference. I'm like, this guy, this is going to be a disaster. It's just going to be, it's cliche and these weird press conferences, and he's crying after the games. And which, by the way, it endears me to a player or coach when they're moved to the point of tears after the games. That tells me you care. Not that you don't care if you don't cry, but I think that matters, and I personally like it. That's just a personal preference. But the culture and the belief, I mean, these guys, even when Detroit sucked 2 years ago and were mediocre last year, they played their butts off for this guy. And it's instilled a level of confidence, and it's instilled, again, the Detroit Lions. If I did just define the Detroit Lions in one word, it'd be guts. I mean, not many coaches, Brandon Staley might have, but how many coaches would have done what Dan Campbell did under 2 minutes to go, fourth quarter? Let's set the scene for y'all, okay? It's 4th down and 2 from the Chargers 26. Minute 47 to go. Game's tied 38-all. 4th and 2. You got a good kicker. Dan Campbell says, you know what? We can't stop Justin Herbert. As good as our defense is, we can't stop the guy. Let's just go for it. Get the first down. We're not going to kick the field goal now. We are going to get the first down. We are then going to bleed the rest of the clock out, then kick the walk-off. And doggone it, is that not exactly what they did? Smart coaching staff he's put around him. They're good situationally. And this guy, against Kansas City. Nobody picked them to beat Kansas. Not even me. I picked them to cover, but not even me picked them to beat the Chiefs. Not on banner night, not at Arrowhead, not the defending champs. First quarter runs a fake punt in his own territory. Who does that? But this guy, there's not many coaches that could get away with it the way this guy does, but it's because his players have this. It's a talented team. I'm not going to shortchange them in that regard, but man, the belief that Dan Campbell has in this football team is just admirable. It's awesome. So I think they're the easiest team in the NFL to root for. They are going to play in the NFC title game, and I firmly believe that to my core. Patrick Brown is talking about the Chargers. He says, typical Brandon Staley. I feel for Justin Herbert, he needs a real head coach and a talented team who's stuck with 2 dead bolts. They're amazing with these. Who's stuck with 2 dead bolts in Brandon Staley, and Kellen in Kellen Moore. I didn't think Kellen actually. Listen, I'm right there with you, Patrick. I've been as critical of Kellen Moore as anybody. You see Dak without Kellen and Dak with Kellen. It's like 2 different players. And Dak was really good 2 years ago with Kellen, but that's really in spite of him. This year, Dak's having the best season of his career to this point. I didn't think Kellen called that bad of a game yesterday. That said, is the defense. I mean, the defense lost. Again, when people blame Justin Herbert, he's overrated. He just puts up big stats. I mean, what, you going to blame for you're going to blame for yesterday? Man threw for 4 touchdowns, scored 38 points. What 4th down conversion after 4th down conversion without his best receiver. Keenan Allen, second best. Keenan Allen's their best receiver still. Mike Williams is excellent. He's probably there too. Without his second best receiver, what do you want him to do? You want to score 50 every game? Come on, man. Patrick, kneecaps were bitten by Detroit. It works, and culture building was needed. Dan Campbell for Coach of the Year. It's a new day in Motown. Yeah, I apologize. I should have brought Dan Campbell up in the Coach of the Year discussion with D'Amico Ryans, with the guy who's in Campbell's division, and Kevin O'Connell. Yeah, Dan Campbell, man, I just remember he was my pick for coach of the year before the season. So maybe I should just ride with that. But he's so easy to root for. Detroit's gonna have to get their defense fixed, but sometimes when you have a deficiency in some regard, the NFL and sports has a funny way of doing this where you're bad in one area, maybe you lose the game. Detroit didn't, but you didn't play well in some aspect, and somehow, some way, you get just what the doctor ordered the next game, or in this case, the NFL the next week. Guess who the Lions have? The Chicago Bears, who are abysmal, unwatchable offensively. That's kind of a get-right game for their defense. We know what their offense is going to do. Detroit's a 10-point favorite. I'll take Detroit to cover, but yeah, that's where we're at. What other games we have? Briefly, Seattle beat the Commanders. That was my upset of the week. Sam Howell played pretty darn well again. It was quite quiet for 3 quarters, went off in the 4th quarter, led a couple touchdown drives, including the tying drive. But Geno Smith, who I had questions about coming in this game, didn't turn the ball over. I still have questions about whether or not he can play clean football, but led a game-winning drive at the end. Seattle won on a walk-off field goal. Props to them. How about Seattle, though? 5 seed in the NFC. Over Dallas today. They got the tiebreaker today over Dallas. So there, props to the Seattle Seahawks. The Raiders 16-12 over the Jets last night. Zach Wilson once again throwing an interception in the 4th quarter. And by the way, I will say this about Zach in his defense, and you guys know since his BYU days, I've never been a Zach Wilson fan. I don't think that many people are. But Zach on that last Hail Mary, he gave Garrett Wilson a shot. It was really Tyler Conklin, the other receiver for the Jets, who came in and almost like played defensive back, and inadvertently, of course, but knocked the pass away from Garrett Wilson. But Antonio Pierce, interim head coach, Raiders are 2-0, and you see him. Last week they were smoking cigars. This week they're dancing. Devontae Adams is going solo in there in the locker room. Aiden O'Connell didn't play that well. Frankly, the Raiders' offense didn't play that well. In their defense, the Jets have a very good defense. But Raiders, all of a sudden, man, in the midst of the wild card picture, half game out of the wild card, or out of the last wild card spot in the AFC, and despite pretty average to below average quarterback play, but again, we talk about culture. Dan Campbell, Antonio Pierce has already established that in Vegas, and if this continues, he should probably be the guy. Unless they get Jim Harbaugh, he should be the guy moving forward for the Vegas Raiders. And then lastly, because this was a 1 o'clock kickoff on the East Coast. I'll put up the Carving Up logo for just a moment. This was a 1 o'clock kickoff on the East Coast, but I did want to mention it last and certainly not least. But in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania yesterday, Pittsburgh, PA, the Pittsburgh Steelers put a hurting on the Green Bay Packers, but they got the W, and Cheesehead Ozzy's in the building today, ladies and gentlemen. Cheesehead Ozzy's today. So, look, as Cheesehead Ozzy, oftentimes I have to be the bearer of bad news. That's just how it goes. That's the burden of playing such a role. But the Packers have had better days in their history. And a matter of fact, I was looking at this and saying, okay, they're 3-6, and Jordan Love threw not 1 but 2 4th quarter interceptions. One of them, in his defense, was a fantastic play made by Patrick Peterson. But the Packers have, right now today, the 3rd fewest wins, tied for the 3rd fewest wins in the National Football League, a team that they own, and they own them, the Chicago Bears. Only a half game back of the Packers. That's where Green Bay is today. Because they put their stock in a kid that evidently didn't show him enough to move on from Rodgers earlier, despite the fact that Rodgers, we saw last year, was a declining player. Christian Watson ain't looking so good. Not the same with that old Rodgers, ain't he? And I'm not even a massive Rodgers fan. Again, just for the record. Green Bay, Matt LaFleur, who I've been told, boy genius, one of the best coaches in the NFL. He was an upgrade over old Mike McCarthy. You Packers fans wanted Mike McCarthy out of the building. And without Rodgers, the Packers are numero uno in the NFL in penalties. Not great. Not great. So, Packers fans, again, hate to be the bearer of bad news. I want to be optimistic, but that's not my job as Cheesehead Ozzy. So, Sharon! Excuse me. Not a good day for Packers faithful. It just was not. It was not a good day for y'all. Okay, Cheesehead Ozzy aside. Get that cheesehead out of here. Put my Steelers hat on. Where's the Steelers hat? I've had 3 wardrobe changes up top here of the old noggin. Dak hat, Steelers hat, cheesehead Ozzy. I had to make it. And then bring out the terrible towel because, oh, whoops, lost an earbud there. So, I don't know what to do with my Steelers. I don't know what to do. So, we're 6-3. I feel like I'm like a lecture or something. We're 6-3, and we have we're tied for the third best record in the loaded AFC. I can't figure it out. Listen, I have a weird relationship in terms of my evaluation of Mike Tomlin. Because on one hand, he is a first ballot, no doubt, Hall of Fame head coach, no losing record, who's a defensive mastermind, and he refuses to evolve offensively. And it was like the opposite. The Steelers went in the opposite direction yesterday, where usually they're garbage through three quarters and then turn it on the fourth. Kenny Pickett, I call him fourth quarter Kenny. I doubt these numbers are the same. I haven't checked, but he usually has like a 100 passer rating in the fourth quarter. And to his credit, and to the Steelers' credit, despite trailing at one point to the Green Bay Packers, 19-17, Kenny Pickett led a drive late third quarter to take the lead, which the Steelers never gave up. But Pittsburgh, first couple drives look amazing. 9 plays, 75 yards, touchdown. Second drive, 11 plays, 60 yards, touchdown. Next drive, 8 plays, 30 yards. They get a field goal out of it. I'm thinking, are we about to wake up offensively? Because I predicted in this game, I said, I'm going to make a bold prediction. We outgain our opponent. Nope, we couldn't do that again. We were unable to outgain the Packers. But as bad as Kenny Pickett was through the majority of the day, at least after the first 3 drives, Steelers defense came through. TJ Watt making plays, Alex Highsmith putting pressure on Jordan Love on that last drive. Patrick Peterson, when the game is a little dicey, 23-19, which ended up being the final score, of course. But with about, what was there, 4 minutes? Was there 4 minutes left in the game? Make sure I'm getting this right. Sorry, a little over 3 minutes. 3 minutes, 20 seconds left in the game when Jordan Love throws that interception. When Patrick Peterson does his best Richard Sherman. Remember Richard Sherman, that play made against Michael Crabtree all those years ago? That's what Patrick Peterson did, guarding Christian Watson, tipping the ball up in the air, gets picked off. And then obviously at the very end, we get the interception to end it. Listen, Steelers, Browns is going to be, I know this is, the Browns call themselves the dog pound. It is going to be a dog fight. I mean, I'm sure it's going to be chippy. There's going to be some personal fouls in this game. It is going to be there's going to be some sore bodies after that game next week in Cleveland. I do not envy those players. Steelers, Browns, both 6-3, both a half game out of the division somehow, especially for the Steelers. Look, Tomlin this matters. As much as I've criticized Tomlin, and I still stand by my criticism in terms of how he's had the inability to adjust, or shown an inability to adjust to modern NFL football on the offensive side. It's just a quarterback's league. I like Kenny Pickett. Think there's something there. Don't think he's special, but I think there's some franchise quarterback qualities that I like. But they execute well. Like, they're the opposite of the Ravens. Ravens are... Listen, I think the Steelers are very talented, but the Ravens I consider slightly more talented. They certainly have the better quarterback in Lamar Jackson. Defensively, they've been better statistically, and they're not good situation in the fourth. Pittsburgh, we're great situation in the fourth quarter. Offensively, not as much offensively, but defensively, certainly. I mean, it's so funny. This was a carbon copy of that game last week against Tennessee, just with a different score. 1-4, opposing quarterback, young quarterback who I don't really believe in, puts together an impressive drive, gets down at or near the red zone, and we get a pick to end the game. Like, I don't know whether to be happy. First year as a Steelers fan, it's weird. I don't know whether to be happy, which I am because we're 6-3. I'm happy about that. We're going to make the playoffs. I mean, we still got to we still get to play the Patriots and the Cardinals. We should beat the Colts. Like, that's 3 wins right there. I don't get it. I don't get it. Patrick, did you and Chloe make a friendly wager before the game? Hopefully she was a good sport. She was a very good sport. We did make a wager. That is disclosed between in the Carver family household. We're just gonna keep that under wraps. But I did listen. She beat me last year because I didn't have a team last year. I was still just all Dak Prescott all the time. Still riding with Dak, no question about it. But I've got a team now. And I had to wear the cheese head on my head all week. And let me tell you something. The cheese head is over there. That thing, for y'all that have never worn it and count yourself lucky, that thing, I guess maybe it's just, I don't know if it's my hair, whatever. The texture, it's my head itches. It's not comfortable. It's kind of struggles staying on my, I don't know, again, it might be my head that's the problem. It's not a fun accessory to wear on your skull. It's just not. But she got me last year. I got her this year. But yes, Patrick, there was a wager. But the terms of it will be kept private, but she was not happy. She didn't speak to me for the rest of the day. Listen, I don't blame her. But she was great about it. All right. Before we get out of here, got a game tonight. Really interesting game tonight for the record. If we can get the background music on, between the Denver Broncos and the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo, New York at Orchard Park. Buffalo, 8-point favorite at home here. Monday Night Football over the Broncos. So Denver's coming off of a bye. Sean Payton, again, we talked about coaches. It's kind of been a theme of today where Kyle Shanahan came off the bye. The Niners look great. I think the Dolphins going to look great coming off a bye. Like, coaches coming off of buys, like, that tends to be kind of like what the doctor ordered in some regards. Same can be said, by the way, about the Detroit Lions as well. It's coming off a bye. Well-coached teams tend to perform well. I still think Sean Payton is a very good head coach. Got off to a rough start, but has seemed to kind of establish a good culture in Denver. The defense under Vance Joseph has made a massive comeback in the last couple of games and their last couple of wins against the Packers and against the Chiefs. Very impressive win against the Chiefs. Gave up only 17 to Green Bay, 9 to Kansas City, the fewest points ever scored by Mahomes in a road divisional game. So the Broncos were great, have been great defensively, offensively. Russell Wilson has quietly had a pretty solid year, a far cry from where he was a year ago when he was undeniably one of the worst quarterbacks in the sport. But he's got 16 touchdown passes, only 4 picks. So Russell's played well. Passing yards aren't really there, neither is the QBR, but overwhelmingly, especially compared to a year ago, Russell seemed to kind of be getting his act together. For Buffalo, most unpredictable team in the league. You don't know what you're getting week to week. Josh Allen could look like the MVP one week. By the way, he is leading in touchdown passes to his credit. He could also look like a bum the next week. He's far from either. He's not the MVP by a long shot. He's not a bum by a long shot. I still think he's elite. Still think he's a franchise quarterback. Still think the Bills can win a Super Bowl with him. I still think there's to be coaching changes in Buffalo. 8-point favorite. That's 8 points is a lot. I'm just going to tell you right now, give me the Broncos. Yes, straight up. Not just end the points. Give me Denver straight up over the Buffalo Bills. Again, I said before the season, Buffalo's going to miss the playoffs. They're going to have a couple of head-scratching losses in order to do so. Denver seems to be I'm not saying the Broncos are going to make the playoffs or anything, but I had the Broncos as a fringe playoff team. Only 1 loss fewer than the Bills this season. I had the Bills at 9 wins, Broncos at 8. I think Denver wins the game. I really do. I think Russell plays well. This Buffalo Bills defense, part of it's been injuries to that side of the ball, hasn't played particularly well over the last month or so of the season. Josh Allen has been a just turnover machine this year, especially on Monday Night Football, especially in primetime games. So give me the Broncos 24-20 over the Buffalo Bills. And with that said, that is all the time here for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by. What a fun one today, right? I mean, just crazy stuff going on in the NFL. Very, very fun show. Had some connection problems early, but we're good. Ready to roll for the rest of the show. Hopefully we can get that ironed out before Wednesday. But thanks everybody for tuning in. Be sure to catch Carving Up Live again on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here on Twitter, as well as the Carving Up YouTube channel and the Grid Network YouTube channel. And of course, you know what to do. Be sure to like, share, comment. Take 2 seconds out of your day. Hit that big red subscribe button. Helps the channel grow exponentially. Again, we're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by Super Bowl 58, which is obviously February the 11th. So we still got a few months to get to the 1,000. We just passed 500 last week. So the growing progress from the show has been awesome to see. It's been amazing to see how many people are responding to the show and who are taking the time out of their day to watch it. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. But hit that big red subscribe button if you have. Tell your friends you know about it. If you have not, hey, takes a couple seconds. That button right there says subscribe. It's red. Hit it. Boom. Part of the Carving Up family. Also, just as important, go subscribe. Be sure to subscribe to the Grid Network. That is GRYD, the Grid Podcast Network, right here on YouTube, as well as any and everywhere you get your favorite podcast, be it Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, any and everywhere you get your favorite podcast. And speaking of the Grid, tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, the 8 o'clock spot at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time on the Grid Network's YouTube channel and Twitter account. The funnest game show in town, funnest sports game show in town. Check it out, YouTube, Twitter, 8 o'clock spot. Be there. It's a blast. Great guys on there. Gonna have a great show tomorrow night. See, I've already seen the people that we're gonna have on. And let me just say something. It's gonna be a blast. It's gonna be fun. Tune into that tomorrow, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific time, and tune into Carving It Up Wednesday at 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific, right here on YouTube and on Twitter. All right. See y'all then. Please be safe out there. Please be sure to take care of your physical as well as your mental health. And please, please, please be sure to contact your local state representatives and senators to demand change for gun violence in America. By the way, a great college football weekend outside of the Tennessee game. I'm just going to say it, and I don't care who this offends. Go Wolverines. Stay safe out there. God bless y'all. Peace out. And yes, I stand with Jim Harbaugh, dang it. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.